and welcome back to the Author Roundup, a special segment of the Book Connection Show, where we meet up-and-coming indie authors and talk to them about their published books. Join us as we sit down with our next guest author. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Author Roundup. My name is Emma, and today I will be chatting to another author who is familiar with publishing, but who has just released her latest children's book in August called Zane's Bark Save the Day. Barb Benninger is an attorney and former nurse. She spent most of her life living on a farm with her family and lots of different animals who now are the subjects of her children's books. Welcome, Barb. It's so great to have you here. How are you today?
I'm good, and I appreciate you spending some time with me.
Oh, yes, of course. So you have published two books, correct? Coco the Pony Found His Path at the beginning of this year, and now Zane's Bark Save the Day, correct?
That's correct.
Awesome. Can you go over your books a little bit? Can you tell us about your published works?
Well, Coco is about a chubby little pony who wants to be like all the other horses in the herd. And he works really hard to try to lose weight so he could be like them. And as he's working hard, he gets stronger and tougher, but he doesn't lose any weight. And then he, at the end of the book, realizes that his weight is actually an asset for him, and he should be what he is and use his own strength. And he becomes a leader of the herd because of his hard work and his physical strength. Mm-hmm. Zane is actually based on a dog that I currently have. Okay. And he's a small dog who has a very loud voice. To the joys of some people and to the frustration of others. And I learned by taking him places. He loves to walk. So we go on walks multiple times. And by taking him places, when he's walking, he barks at everything. He barks at himself in the reflections of cars and glass doors, and barks at animals, barks at everything. So some people find that very endearing. Others find it very annoying. And as I have taken him different places, I've learned that he makes a name for himself wherever we go. And so I turned that into a story. So it's pretty much almost a nonfiction book. Has a little twist in it, that was fiction. But for the most part, the comments and things about him are comments that people have made to me. So
right. So Zane is real. Was Coco real as well?
No, Coco himself. I actually had a horse named Coco. Okay. And he was a little bit overweight, so that was that part is true. Part was true. But the pony portion of that came from a drawing that my daughter did when she was a little girl. She drew a funny little picture, which I put in the book. Right. And we always called that Coco the Pony, this picture, and that's how I turned that into Coco. So the story is that one's completely fiction.
Right. Oh my gosh. So what inspired the stories for both of these books? Is it correct that you grew up on a farm and your family as well? Like your kids grew up on a farm as well?
I spent most of my own life on a farm, and my parents, we lived in a small town part of my growing up. And then when I got married, we were fortunate enough to find a farm and raised all of our three kids on a farm. I really enjoy farm life. I would still be there if it wasn't 150% work all the time. But it's a great way to grow up, and you can have multiple animals. We had, all kinds of dogs and cats and horses and cows and, everything, plus wild animals in the woods. And it just was a good place for young kids to be able to be outside and enjoy animals. And really, I think was a very healthy way to grow up.
Where was your farm located?
Southwestern Pennsylvania. We lived in Smithfield, Pennsylvania. My original family lived in a little area called Vanderbilt, Pennsylvania. And then when my husband and I got married, we lived in Smithfield, Pennsylvania, because we work in Morgantown, West Virginia, and Smithfield is just north of the West Virginia line in Pennsylvania, close enough for, commuting.
Okay. That's very, very cool. So then you live in Florida now, correct?
Correct.
No farm. So when's the last time you lived on a farm?
We sold our big farm in 2018. We actually rent back one of the houses that was on the farm because it was a good sized farm, and we had several houses and an apartment, and we rented back from the friend who bought the farm a house that my husband and I stay in when we're up north working in the law office.
Okay.
So we actually still have a connection to the farm, but it's just not ours to do all the work now.
Yeah. And so what about your kids? Do any of them, you mentioned that your son now lives in Florida. What about your other kids? Do they live in cities or country or?
They're in cities. My daughter is a physician in Cleveland, Ohio. And then my youngest son is living in Atlanta, just started a new job. He was in the Navy before for I forget how many years. He went to the Naval Academy, graduated, served in the Navy for several years, and then now he's out and got a master's degree. So he's started a new job, and he and his wife are awaiting a new baby and are living in Atlanta.
Right. Awesome. So it seems you've always loved animals, different kinds of animals, and they've obviously inspired you to write children's books. Had you written anything before, or are these two your first official written published works?
These are my two first written works, or published works. About the same time that I actually wrote Coco probably 13 years ago.
Wow.
About it was when my youngest son went off to the Naval Academy, and I was kind of a little bit empty nesting, and I started working on a fiction mystery book, which I've got probably about halfway done, and I must have worked on Coco at the same time, and then the law office life got in the way and things got shelved. Then when we sold the farm, the manuscripts that I had were basically in a bag, and we just moved from place to place because, as I told you, we rented different places on the farm. We moved from one place to another place to another place, and then in the most recent move, my husband was going through stuff and he found this, and he goes, "You ought to take a look at this Coco." And I read it and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even remember having completed it. And it was about 97% done. It needed a couple little paragraphs to tweak it. And so I did it. And then we started into the process of how to get it published and picking illustrations and things like that. So it became a fun project. Zane was something that came since Coco was published, and actually I have another one that's in the process right now that I kind of wrote about this. I would go back and forth between Zane and a book about a dog named Vanessa. Vanessa is almost finished with the illustration phase, so it'll be coming around here pretty soon.
Oh, great. That's awesome. And what kind of dog is Zane that you currently have?
He's a sheltie, a Shetland sheepdog.
Okay, awesome. And so what's the sort of message in Zane's Barks Saves the Day? Just briefly going over it, because it's actually a pretty cool story. Or is that part fiction?
No. The little bit of him becoming a hero is the fiction part. Although I think he probably has it in him if this situation
could happen. I was like, I feel like
it could happen.
Really,
yeah. He as I told you, when we walk, people either laugh and talk to him or talk about how happy he is. And I have one neighbor who said he makes her happy every time she hears him. Because you can tell he just really likes what he's doing. I put the leash on him and he takes off and barks. But I do have a couple people who have been like, why on earth do you put up with that noise? Well, I mean, that's just his personality, and
Yeah.
I can't stifle that, nor would I want to. I mean, sometimes I'd like to turn his volume down a little bit, but otherwise. But anyway, so I thought, how would I turn his barking into something that would be helpful to us? So that's where the story came from.
Oh, that's great. And how long did it take? So you published both books this year. Coco had been done well before this, but you published both of them this year. How was that process like, publishing two books in 1 year?
It was really interesting. I mean, it's not, and maybe it's a children's book view of things. I didn't find it to be as hard as I thought it would be. I mean, the first time through with Coco, I had no idea what I was doing. And the folks at the publishing company were very helpful and, led me through it all. Zane's was, while I had a few different people that I made contact with, for the most part, it was pretty similar. So I kind of knew what to expect. And, once I got the writing part done, I knew what I wanted the illustrations to look like. So that was, it was easier the second time through. First time I was like, I have no idea what you want me to do, So it was a very good learning experience. And Zane, the stories just take whatever they take for me to think of. And if I get it into my head, then I can turn them out, not quickly, but it just, the only problem is when I'm thinking that way, I think in rhymes for everything. Like I start whenever I'm like emailing people, I could put it into a rhyme. So it's kind of a strange way to think about everything. So, and then sometimes if I'm really into the story, then I won't sleep as well because I'll be laying in bed thinking about it. Yeah.
So is Coco the pony, is that in a rhyme form?
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And what was your writing process like? I guess since you had written Coco the pony years and years ago, what was it maybe like writing it then versus writing Zane?
I don't think it was a whole lot different. When I was like 10 years old, I told my mother that I had written a poem for my dad for his birthday. He was born on Halloween. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's
so yeah. So she's, I had typed it up and put it in like a little folder and all that. So she was thinking, I'm going to be like, roses are red, violets are blue. I love you, Dad. You love me too. Something like that. Well, it was a probably 30 paragraph long story of his life in rhymes. So I guess maybe this has just been something that was kind of how I did whenever I was little. And then
that's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, so it's gone into your adult life too. That's so cool.
Yeah. Well, I loved books like the Dr. Seuss books with the rhythm and the rhymes and things like that. Yeah. And so I don't know if that's why I did that whenever I was young.
Yeah, maybe that was your inspiration.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. I will say also the design of your books, like I like the way they like complement each other very, very well. Was that intentional? Did you have that in mind to do that? You
mean like the covers?
Yeah, the covers.
Well, that was something last October when the process was happening. Coco's publishing took longer than Zane's did. And when I was trying to think of a cover, my husband and I own a property in Nags Head, North Carolina, where we spend a lot of time. That would probably be where we would live permanently if it wasn't for the fact that my kids are down here. Yeah. So we went to an arts festival that they had in October last year, and just walking around, and we ran into a display of artwork created by a woman who lives in the Outer Banks area, and she does glass work. It's not really stained glass. She does like layering of glass, and then I'm not sure how the process works, but she creates a picture. And hanging in her tent of things to sell was the picture of Coco the pony that's on that cover book. So if you look at the Coco, well, you probably haven't seen the Coco the pony, but if you look at the Coco the pony book, it's a picture of a brown horse, which looked just like my horse that I had that was named Coco. So I'm looking at that picture, or looking at her piece of artwork, and my husband said to me, "Take a look at that." And I said, "Yeah, that looks like Coco the pony." And he said, "You should ask her if you could use that for your cover." And I said, "Oh, that's a really good idea." So I talked with the lady. Her name is Kim Richardson, and she said, "Oh, she'd be thrilled to death." So we bought the piece of artwork, and it actually hangs in the doorway of my house in North Carolina. And then I contacted the publisher and said, "Can I use something like this?" And they said, "Yeah, if the artist agrees, you can use whatever you want." So we made that the cover. And I feel like, looking at the book, it's, instead of looking like a cartoon book, it looks like a piece of artwork, which you wouldn't mind having sitting on your coffee table or on your bookshelf, because it's a pretty cover. So when I went on to do the Zane book, then I hired her to create one for Zane. And that's how the Zane cover, and actually the Zane cover looks just like Zane. I sent her several pictures, and she created it. And then she also did one for Vanessa, which will be coming out, like in the next couple of months. So she does.
So cool.
Yeah. And I wanted them all. I mean, they're different in different colors, but I wanted the picture of the animal to be a well-done piece of art. Yeah.
That is so cool. Yeah, I've never heard that done before. Yeah, and it's so unique also, like you said, to have something different than just like a regular like cartoon cover. And I bet she was thrilled too. I feel like she probably had never gotten that request, and it's cool that you asked her to do Zane Spark Save the Day. That's so cool. Yeah, that's very, very.
So when Vanessa comes out, hers has a picture of a beautiful black German Shepherd. So I feel like it ties my books together, even though they're different animals and different stories. But it also makes them a dressy, artistic piece of child book, as opposed to just. I mean, I could have put a cartoon character on, but I think this makes it prettier.
More different. Yeah. And what was your favorite part about each book that you've written? And I guess Vanessa as well. Are there certain parts of each book that you enjoyed writing?
With Zane and Vanessa, they're kind of based on like true things that really happened. You know what I mean? It's Coco was a made up pony. But Vanessa and Zane are real dogs in our lives. And so it was fun to tell something about their personalities and try to, turn that into a story that a child reading it might learn something from. With Zane, it was kind of like, you can be important and be a hero because of your unique personality. With Vanessa had cancer, and she had to go through treatments and all of that. And it made her one of the most loving dogs. And she was so sweet and good in the family that, it was fun to tell stories that mean something to me that then I hope kids can learn something from.
Right. What was the most difficult part about your writing experience or your writing process?
Like I told you, when I start to get it into my head, sometimes then I can't shut it off. As I'm trying to make the rhymes and so sometimes I'll keep myself up at night thinking about it till I get, because if you're going to make it rhyme, it's got to have the right rhythm, and I got to turn the words around and around over and over, and so I find myself repeating it, and so probably that's the hardest thing, is just coming up with the rhymes. But I like to do it, so it's fun.
What's your writing process like? Do you have a certain like setup or anything, or do you write better at a certain time, or when it just is there certain rhymes that come to you at like a certain time? You're like, oh, that's crazy that it happens like that.
That's kind of how it happens. And the other night I started another one. I had another German Shepherd that we lost a year ago, and this is kind of a way for me to keep them alive and make a tribute to them, because we all of our family, they meant so much to all of us. So it's kind of a way for me to keep them going. But anyway, I had to get up in the middle of the night the other night because I was turning some words in my head, and I was like, I got to get this done, written down, just even jotted down, or else tomorrow morning I'll be like, boy, I had a good idea last night. I can't remember. and the funny thing is, when I'm walking with Zane and he's barking his, barking. Sometimes I'm just walking along, and the rhythm of walking will make me start putting words together. So that's
cool.
Yeah.
How many animals have you had in your lifetime, would you say?
We made a list one time, and we had over 30 dogs, I think.
Just dogs. Oh my gosh.
We probably had about 15 different horses over the years. Plus, we ran a boarding stable on our farm, so we had other people's horses as well. So we had, and every animal has its own personality. So, I could think of traits attributable to other animals as well, not just my own. We always had lots of cats, but the dogs probably were the ones, that really stuck out with stories.
And so your just entire family just loves animals. Your kids love animals, and that's great. Yeah, I have 2 cats, and I love my cats. And I grew up with dogs too, but I feel like living on a farm would have been so fun. Yeah, like you would just learn about like hard work and and different animals as well. Like, so you had horses, cats, dogs? Did you have like any like chickens or like goats or cows, or was it just
we had cows. We raised cows. We had the kids got to see a couple calves be delivered by cesarean sections.
Oh my goodness.
We bred horses, so we were able to have foals delivered on the farm, which was real interesting for the kids as well. And talking about farms, you do learn a lot about hard work, which is not a bad thing to learn. I think there's a lot of kids nowadays that don't ever get that experience. My kids are all 3 very hardworking young adults. And I think it's because they grew up having responsibilities of taking care of the animals and helping around the farm. It was a good learning lesson.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely.
We also had lots of not wild animals, but non-domesticated animals like raccoons, coyotes, things like that on the farm that were always an interesting side for the family. As a matter of fact, one of the ideas for a book would be called Our Other Family. Another picture that my daughter drew when she was younger was Our Other Family, and it was coyotes and raccoons and all of the extra animals that made their way into our farm life.
Oh my gosh. That is so. Have you guys ever rescued any animals?
Oh yeah.
I bet.
I think that how in the 101 Dalmatians there was like a hotline where the dogs would talk about things, and it went through the neighborhood. I think we were the bottom of the cat hotline because we got all the stray cats. We lived far off the road, so it wasn't like people would necessarily drop them off at the top of the road and they would find their way. It was almost like they knew, come looking because you're going to find food and a place to stay on this farm.
Yeah.
Because we always had more cats than we could count.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That is so cool. That is like such a fun way to like grow up. And speaking of your daughter and her art, what did she think of when you added her art to the book, and also, like, did she think that her drawings would make it into a book at all?
I don't think so. And I think when she looks back at those pictures now, because she was, I think, 7, and a long time ago, and I think she's like, oh gosh, that's what I drew back then. But I thought it was adorable. So if you look in the back of the Coco book, it was so cute. And I didn't tell the kids that I was doing the Coco book until it came out. So they were all like, wow, when did you do this?
Really?
So I think it was a real surprise for them, because they didn't even know I was going through the publishing process. I kept it really quiet until there was a finished product. And
that's so cool. I bet they were very, very surprised. That's
they
fun.
were. And then now I have grandkids who are of the age that they can, read the books, learn to read the books. And my son was reading the Zane book to his daughter, who's 2.5 now. And he FaceTimed me, and she was pointing at the pictures. And then she got to the picture where I'm in the back, and she said, Bubba, because that's what she calls me. So that kind of makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah, that's so cool. What has been like the best feedback or review that you've received from either one or both of your books?
Probably that one I just told you. Having Amelia, who is the youngest granddaughter, and about to become sister. Her mom is pregnant with a new one.
Congratulations!
Actually due to deliver like any day. She was due yesterday.
Oh my God!
We're waiting on a new baby sister. But the fact that she wanted to read the book and recognize that Bubba was in it,
that's so cool.
Leaves, it'll give the kids something to remember me by when I'm long gone.
Do your grandkids? I bet they love like cats and dogs. They know that you guys had so many animals growing up. I bet.
I sort of regret that we don't still live on the farm, because little kids, that's a great way to come to visit grandma and grandpa. It just got to be so much work for my husband and I by ourselves. We couldn't find help to help us, and
with your jobs and everything too.
Right.
I bet that was a lot. But.
Well, and we wanted to be able to visit the kids, where when you've got that kind of responsibility on a farm, unless you've got somebody that can help you, you need to stay there, and so we made that choice. But I do regret that we're not there for those kinds of experiences for the kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How much work was it actually, like, being on a farm? How many hours a week would you say?
Well, in the summertime, my husband and I would each cut grass, each of us 8 to 10 hours a weekend, just to keep up with the grass just around the house. And we had over 600 acres, so we had a lot of land. And keeping the fencing up, keeping barns painted, keeping
so the maintenance alone is like a lot.
Right. And then if you add animals to it, horses require a lot of care and a supervision, because they get hurt, they get sick. You can't just, like with a cat, you can put out a bowl of food and water, and they're pretty good for a while.
Days you could actually.
Yeah, actually. And but cows and horses are, they're not like that. You've got to, it's daily work. And it's great. I love farming. But it's a very difficult thing to make a living at nowadays, and it takes a lot of work.
Mm-hmm. What advice would you give for someone who is wanting to publish their story and their book?
Find somebody publishing wise who will give you some help, because till you get through the process, it's like a foreign language. But it needs to be fun. If it's too much work, then it's work. So I enjoy the rhyming and the coming up with the stories, or I wouldn't bother doing it.
Right.
There has to be some fun in it, or it's
And you have to be passionate about it and
Yeah.
about your story as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not as good at this stuff, at the marketing. I'm better at the coming up with the ideas and putting it on the paper, and then, you know.
Yeah. What was your experience like with Archway, and how did you discover Archway Publishing?
We kind of researched on the internet about who was good with children's book, and made contact with them. And the person that I had made contact with was so kind and nice to talk with and helpful. And and the process has been, they've helped me through it, because otherwise I'm not sure how you would know how to do it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I feel like all the research alone can be very overwhelming as far as like the parts of getting your book published. And then, once it's published, it's like there's still work after that. So the marketing, there's so many different kinds of marketing to do, and it just depends on what you want and what your goals are for your book. And if you want to make it into like a career, or like if you want to publish more books as well. So so you said you have another, is the Vanessa book like completed as far as like writing goes?
It's completed as far as writing, and the illustrations are like about 99% done. So once the illustrations are done, then they'll put it together and send it to me for final review. I already have the cover art from my friend who is the glass worker. So then that'll just be a matter of how quickly Archway assembles it. And like I said, Zane happened a lot faster than Coco did. Coco probably took, I'm going to say, 10 months to a year. Zane happened in a couple of months, actually.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. And so Vanessa, is she a dog you currently have? Or
no, she's passed away? She's passed away, but she was like she's one, of course, we're like this with all of our dogs. They're like one of
They're
a
like
kind.
A person. They're like a little person. Yeah.
So she was a dog who developed cancer, and so we ended up doing radiation therapy, and she had to go through IVs and all this stuff. And we thought that would be an interesting story, because when I was a nurse, I worked with hematology oncology, was one of the areas that I worked in. And so I dealt a lot with children with cancer. And so we thought that might be a book that a kid who's going through, treatments might identify with.
Oh, yeah, that's great. I really like that. And so Zane, is he, I haven't heard any barks from Zane this whole, is he sleeping?
I took him for a long walk this morning, and what he does, he turned 13 this week. So he's an elderly small dog. And, but now that the weather's nice, he's really perky. When we walked this morning, he was going to town barking. But normally, if I walk him long enough, then he'll come in and sleep for a couple of hours. Then he'll get up like clockwork and come to me and say, it's time to go for another walk. And most of the people around here probably think I'm crazy because I spend a lot of time walking him. But it's good for me physically, and it's good for him.
I mean, he's 13. He gets lots of walks from his owner.
So. He does. As a matter of fact, I thought maybe he might come to me and you might end up hearing him, but I think he finally gave up and went to sleep.
That's okay. He can rest. Well, do you have any other like professional or like personal goals for the rest of this year? I know that you said that you're an attorney and you spend time in North Carolina.
I try to get to North Carolina. My husband and I have been going there for 40 years, and it's like that's our place. We love it in Florida, but we really love North Carolina. So we try to get there as often as we can. As a matter of fact, I'm scheming right now how I can get there for a couple of weeks. And if I'm there without a lot of distraction, that's a good place for me to write, because I can take walks on the beach and think about rhymes as I'm walking. Also, with the holidays coming up, where, who's going to be where. My daughter-in-law here is on call for Thanksgiving, so we probably will be here for Thanksgiving because she can't go anywhere. My daughter has to work Christmas. So we have to kind of play with the holidays to see where we can get everybody to be. Yeah. And then of course we're waiting with bated breath for this new baby that's coming any minute now.
Oh my God.
And I hate to call and say, is anything happening? Because I know when you're 9 months pregnant, you get really sick of people calling and saying, are you still there? So I know. I've been just like checking in every day or every other day or so just to see that everything's okay. But I don't want to say, are you in labor yet? Because it's very frustrating when you're that far along.
Yeah, no, it's crazy you say that, because that's pretty fresh in my mind too. I had my daughter last year, my first child, and I was I made it to 40 weeks, and then I was induced. So it was getting kind of like, oh man, please nobody ask me how I'm doing. I'm just doing my best. I'm trying. I'm doing all the things. So that's very kind that you have that compassion for her. Well, is there anything else that you would like to discuss today, or anything you'd like to share with our readers listening?
Just tell them to try one of my books and see if they like it. Hopefully it will make them happy.
Yeah. I mean, everyone always has grandkids, children that they can read to. And both of your books have really, really good messages. And yes, if you would like to purchase Barb's book, you can purchase it at the online bookstore at archwaypublishing.com, Amazon, and Barnes & Noble. Thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you so much for publishing with Archway and letting us help share your story, Barb.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you spending time with me. It's fun to talk about the books.
Yes.
I appreciate it. Thank you, everybody.
And you do have a website as well. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? Yeah,
I'm not real good with social media, but my husband set me up a website, barb-books.com, and we're hoping that as time goes on, I'll get better with posting and doing things like that.
You can definitely contact Barb through her website if you have any feedback or comments or reviews. She would love to hear them. So
I would.
Yeah.
I welcome them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you for listening. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.